Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sift and Simmer with me, Anita Manager. I want to start off by saying that there's enough negativity going on in the world today, so we are only going to be talking about positive and happy things, and we're going to drink and have a sweet and enjoy ourselves. So today I want to start by thanking everybody who is making this a little bit more bearable for us. Netflix and Hulu putting out all these great movies, people on the internet doing little shows like myself, and just anything that can distract us from being stuck in the same place every single day. I'm on day 18 and I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm happy to be here and I am happy to have the grand finale to International Week. Tonight we are making a Mexican hot chocolate and churros. So I hope you're excited because I am. The churros are a really big hit in my house. So to start, we're gonna go with a Mexican hot chocolate. So I've got my pot here. This one's a little bit more invasive than the other ones have been. So you might wanna take notes if you wanna make this at home, but it's absolutely delicious. So to make the Mexican hot chocolate, what I'm doing is I'm just preheating the pan just a little bit. And then I've got 8 ounces of 60% chocolate that I'm gonna put into the pan while it's still warming up. And before that completely melts, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just make sure that all the chocolate is sitting on the pan. And just to speed things up a little bit, I cheated. You don't necessarily have to do this. I heated up my milk in my half and half. So here I have 1 3/4 cup of milk. And then to make it even more delicious, I have 1.5 cups of heavy cream. This is very sweet and very rich, so you're not going to want to have too much of this. This is something that I like to have when I'm sitting by the fire in the early spring or mid-fall. So it's nice because it's warm and sweet and it's got a little bit of kick to it. Alright, so once your chocolate starts to melt, what you're going to do before it boils is you're going to put the rest of your ingredients in. So I've got 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. There you go. I have half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I've got half a teaspoon of salt. I have half a teaspoon of vanilla. And finally, cayenne. You can skip this part, but it definitely gives it a great flavor profile to add a little bit of spice to it. And when I say a dash, I mean actually a dash. You're doing this more for the flavor of the cayenne pepper as opposed to the heat from the cayenne pepper. So I didn't even dose this out. I'm literally just going to do a little bit of a sprinkle right on top. And you're just gonna give this a stir. And then the moment that it starts to boil, it's done. You don't want it to really boil because it's gonna start to create that skin on top of the milk, and that's gross. Nobody likes that. While we're waiting for this to come to a boil, I'll let you know my Venmo, which is Anita_Manager, and all of the proceeds of that goes directly towards all of the food that we make and all of the drinks that we make together. So every penny is appreciated, especially in this trying time. I do have good news for everybody though. For the first time in my life, my unemployment got cleared. So I'll be waiting for that to start. And then we'll make steak one night. How does that sound? Okay, so this is just about to come to a boil. The reason that you want it to come to a boil before you turn it off is because you want to make sure that all of those little bits of chocolate have completely melted, so that way you're not getting hot milk. I've never understood that when you're watching like a movie or something and the mom is like, let me get you a glass of warm milk before you go to bed. That sounds disgusting. I'm gonna have nightmares and throw up in my bed. So that's just my little tidbit of education for those parents out there. Don't give your kids warm milk, it's gross. Okay, so this is just starting to boil, and now this is the fun part. If you don't have kids that are going to be sharing this with you, I have 4 ounces of tequila. And you're gonna pour that directly in and give it a stir. And that is my Mexican hot chocolate. And I have to say, this is absolutely delicious. That kick of the tequila really does put it over the edge. Ugh, I'm so excited. Okay. And what goes better with churros and hot chocolate? The correct answer is nothing. All right. And we'll have a taste. Oh my God, it's so good. That little kick from the cayenne pepper is absolutely fantastic. It's got more of like a little bit of a smoky flavor. If you don't want to use cayenne, you can use chipotle powder. And I would do the same thing. I would just put a little bit of a sprinkle in, just so that you get that smoky earthiness to it. Oh, it's so good. Oh my God. Okay. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, you know what? I'm actually gonna put this over here just in case I run out, because I might need some more. All right, now that my work surface is clean, I'm going to move on. So for the churros, we're pretty much gonna be doing the same thing that we did for the eclairs. So I've got flour, butter, sugar, salt, and room temperature eggs. I've got 1 cup of water ready to go in my pot, and I'm gonna turn that on. And before this even really starts to heat up, I'm just gonna throw the butter right in. What we're doing here is we're just making a basic choux. Okay, so I'm gonna leave my flour to the side because that's gonna go in after it starts to boil. So it's 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of water, half a cup of butter. I've got 2 tablespoons of sugar and half a teaspoon of salt. So once this comes to a boil, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold the flour in, and then I'm gonna transfer it out of this pot into a bowl. So the reason that you're gonna do that is because we're gonna be adding the eggs, and you want it to cool down a little bit more than you do with like an eclair. You want it to be a little bit more gummy, so that way when you pipe it, you can really keep the shape of it. Okay, so clean up my workstation a little bit and get ready for the next part. Okay. Now tonight for my choux pastry, what I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using my hand mixer, but I'm going to have the dough attachments to them, just because it'll help break it up a little bit, and it'll also help incorporate the eggs just a little bit faster. I wonder how many of you are on at least day 18. I actually read an article today saying that we're going to be hitting the peak of the dormant period, so it's either going to get worse or get better, so here's for that. Okay, so my water is just starting to boil and my butter is pretty much all melted. Okay, so from here what I'm going to do is, while it's still on, I'm going to add my flour. So I've got 1 cup of flour, and I'm just going to stir this until the flour has absorbed all of the water and butter, and then I'm going to turn it off and transfer it to my glass bowl. So I do things a little bit different when it comes to churros. Typically what you do is you put it into a piping bag and you pipe it directly into the oil. I've found that it cooks a little bit more evenly, and it keeps its shape a little bit better if you pipe them out onto a cookie sheet first and then refrigerate them. And also it's a lot easier to get them into the oil instead of having to cut them with a knife or scissors or whatever. Okay, so now that I've got all of that mixed in, she's gonna go right into the bowl. Beautiful. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just going to spread it out a little bit so that way it can cool down before I put the eggs into it. While I have a second, I'm gonna tell you guys, next week we're doing bread week, and I am so excited. I love making bread. Today I actually started my sourdough starter, so that way I can use that as opposed to using yeast, and it is so much easier than I thought it was going to be. It's literally equal parts flour and water, and just put it in a bowl. we'll get to that later. If you plan on making the sourdough along with me at the end of the episode, I'm just gonna show you what I did to get my starter going, so that way you can make it with me. Okay, so this should be cooled down enough. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to hit it with my mixer a little bit before I put the egg in it so it gets nice and cool. And that's it, that's all you really need to do. And now I'm just gonna put them in one egg at a time. So I've got 3 whole eggs here. If you don't get scrambled eggs with the first one, you're good to go. With the first egg that you put in, it's not gonna fully come together. But with the second one, it really starts to give you that nice consistency. At this point, it's starting to look like chewing gum. And then with the last one, it should be a nice, smooth choux pastry. Perfect, and that's it. So from here, what I'm gonna do is I am going to take my rubber spatula and I'm just going to continue to fold it around just to make sure that it's all incorporated. Nice. I'm gonna get my oil heated up. Okay, so from here, what you're gonna do is you are going to put this directly into a piping bag and you're able to get, I would say between 18 and 23 4 to 5 inch long churros. So what I'm gonna do now is I have my cookie sheet ready for me. I've got my pastry bag here and handy dandy pan. You're gonna spray the parchment paper before you put it into the refrigerator so that way it's easier to scoop off the churros so that way they can get into the oil. All right, I've got a star tip on my pastry bag and I'm just going to get my dough in the bag. My favorite part about this also is you don't necessarily have to make all of the churros at the same time. You can leave them in the refrigerator for a day so that way you get churros for 2 days instead of just one. All right. So now that I've got this all in my pastry bag, I'm going to be careful because the pastry bag is going to be hot. So for the temperature of the oil, you want it to be between 360 degrees and 380. Okay, so I've prepped my parchment and now I'm just gonna pipe them all out. So this is gonna be the easy part as opposed to the hard part because we're just gonna get them all prepped and ready to go in the oil. And then we're gonna get them in the fridge so that way they harden up a little bit. So that way it's easier to cook them all. And you can get these guys really close to each other because we're not baking them on the cookie sheet, so you don't have to worry about them touching and growing. Okay, so that is a quick piping job of my churros. Okay, so these are gonna go into the refrigerator for 15 minutes to 30 minutes. So this is what they look like before they go in. And then this is what they look like when they come out. So they're gonna look exactly the same. They're not gonna grow, they're not gonna shrink, and they're gonna be super easy to get directly into the oil. Now, the one thing that you want to be really careful of when you are frying things is you want to make sure that you're putting it in the oil away from you. If you put it in the oil and it's going towards you, if it splashes, it's going to hit you. And you want to be careful because there is Pam on this and it does have a different heat temp. So I've got my candy thermometer. I'm going to check my oil. Just takes a second. I hate filling up my pan with oil to the point where it reaches the thermometer because I feel like it wastes so much oil. So I lay it down for a sec and let it lay in the oil so that way I can get an accurate temperature. Okay, so this is just about done. While I'm doing this, we can get our cinnamon sugar ready. So I have a plate here with a lid. I've got half a cup of sugar and I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon. When you take out your churros from the oil, you want to be careful not to put them directly into the cinnamon sugar. You're going to want to let them cool for a second. If you don't let them cool, you have to be careful because it's just going to get the cinnamon sugar all wet with oil and you're going to need a lot more than you should. Okay, so I've got my cinnamon sugar ready to go. And my oil should be ready for me. It's just about there. Okay, so now I'm going to just make sure that all of my churros aren't stuck to the paper because that just makes it a lot faster. And they're lifting up super easy right off of the parchment. So I've got 18 here out of the first batch, and I have 18 in the second batch. So that's 36 churros that we are going to devour this evening. And then we make a chocolate sauce that we will be making in just a minute after we get the churros in. It's absolutely delicious. Okay, so my oil is ready for my churros, and I'm just gonna put them in directly with my hands. So I'm gonna put in probably like 4 or 5 of them. You don't want to put in too many because they are coming out of the refrigerator and it's going to cool down the oil. And then it'll just take a lot longer and it's going to overcook them. Okay. What do we got? 4, 5. That should be enough for the first pan. Okay, so you're going to put these in the oil for, I would say, between 3 and 6 minutes. And while we're waiting for those, how many of you are binge watching TV shows or movies? I'd like to know what you're watching because I think I am really close to being out of movies and TV shows to watch. My sister and I started watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer from season 1. It doesn't hold up that well. It was my favorite movie growing up and it's not doing well. Okay. So I've got my tongs, and what I'm gonna do is once I start to notice the top of them slightly turning brown, I'm gonna flip them over because there's enough oil in the pan for them to sink. So they're gonna cook pretty evenly, but the heat's coming from the bottom, like myself. And you just wanna make sure that they cook evenly because you want a nice golden color on the outside and a nice chewy center. So the way that you make them filled with chocolate, I think that they probably pipe the dough around something because I can't imagine how I would make a hollow churro. Again, I also do hair. I'm not a professional chef. I'm sure that you could probably just pipe directly into them after they've cooled down a little bit and you can touch them. I honestly have no idea. I like mine dipped in chocolate because then I can control how much chocolate I'm getting onto them. Speaking of chocolate, don't mind if I do. That tequila, it sounds so weird to me to think of like tequila and milk and chocolate, but it is so delicious. Okay, these are just about ready, and that is a quick fry. How about that? Okay, so I've got my gold here, also known as paper towels. I've got 1 roll left, so I'm going to be very stingy with them. I'm going to get it ready on the side of my oil, and I'm going to take them out of the frying pan and directly onto the paper towel while I get my next batch in, and then I'm going to put the first batch into the cinnamon sugar. Okay. While I'm waiting for that, we can start to get our chocolate sauce together. So for our chocolate sauce, what you want to do is you want to take 1 cup of heavy cream and put it in the microwave for like 2 minutes until it's like hot to the touch. And then we're going to pour it over chocolate morsels, and we're just going to let it do its work. So here I have 200 grams of chocolate morsels, and I have 1 cup of very hot, heavy cream. So I'm just going to pour that directly over the chocolate, and that's it. You see that steam? This is going to be so great. Okay, so while that's doing its work, I'm going to flip these guys one more time. You want to be careful with flipping them, because if you flip them too much, it's going to start to soak up the oil, because the oil will be sitting on top where it's cooler. So for the tequila that I use Jose Cuervo. I prefer to use a clear tequila when I'm making the hot chocolate, because I feel like it doesn't give it that much of an aftertaste of the tequila. But I'm sure you could use any tequila, really. Okay, so these have got a pretty good color on them out of the oil. And now we're going to go in with our next ones. So I'm going to do 6 more, or 5 more, excuse me. And also, when you're putting them in, I personally like to go in the same direction every time. I start on the left and work my way right, so I know how long each of them have been in. Okay, so now these have drained enough that I'm not going to completely soak my cinnamon sugar. So I'm just going to give them a quick toss. And that is that for my churros. These are super light and airy. And they are a really quick make. And in a time where we're looking for things to do, this would be fun to make with the kids and then take them out into the backyard. Okay. So while these are cooking, let me tell you something. I don't know how many of you out there watch Hoarders. Stress me the F out. I watch those shows and I get itchy. I actually have to shower. I can't sit there and watch Hoarders. I don't know how people do that. Drives me crazy. Oh, it's so scary to me. And all the animals and piles and oh my God. Okay, so that was a tangent. I can't watch Hoarders. I can't watch Marie Kondo, because then I would be obsessed with cleaning. I can't watch these shows. I clean enough as it is, and now I clean even more. Get me stuck on a tangent. My goodness. Okay, so my chocolate sauce that I have over here, the hot heavy cream has been sitting long enough where I'm going to start to stir the chocolate. And you're going to want the hot heavy cream to do the work for you. You don't want to have to heat this up again, because then it's going to start to separate the chocolate, and then you're going to have that piecey chocolate where it's like lumpy, and you're not going to have like a proper sauce. Okay, I'm going to give these guys a quick turn. Ugh, these are a much better color. I should have left the other ones. Okay. Awesome. I'm so excited. All right. So my sauce here is just about together. I usually use a whisk for this, and I didn't prepare it, so you're gonna sit here and watch me stir this chocolate sauce for 3 years with a spoon. Okay. So when it comes to the chocolate sauce, I like it to be a little bit liquidy, so that way it more so coats the churro as opposed to getting like a thick chocolate shell on it. You can do that by doing more chocolate, less heavy cream, but you'll see the consistency once I'm done with this, how it coats to the churros. Cooking in drag is a lot easier than you think it is. I usually have a house full of people after my shows, and we all come back to my house and I end up cooking in drag anyway. Robin Fierce, she may weigh 6 pounds, but that girl can eat, my goodness. And Sienna, she may not eat a lot during the day, but you get that girl drunk, she gonna eat. Okay, so I've got my second batch ready here. And you know what? We're all together. I'm gonna throw in another one while I'm still gonna be serving this chocolate. And you guys can actually see how quick and easy it is to make these churros. That's it. Okay, so my chocolate sauce is finally coming together. So, like I said, this is gonna be a little bit more liquidy. So if you're gonna reheat a churro, the best way that I have found to do it is if you quickly run it under water from the sink and put it in the oven, it's going to get the inside a little moist from the moisture on the outside, and then the heat from the oven is going to reheat the outside, so you'll get that crunch back. But also, do you ever have leftover churros? Because I think you're eating churros wrong if you do. Okay, so this is just about together, and I'm gonna pour this into a ramekin, and I'm gonna make a mess everywhere. Oh my God, look at that. No mess. She's a professional now. Okay, so I'm going to get my cinnamon sugar for round 2. Give these guys a quick coat, and then I'll show you the finished product. The one thing I have found about refrigerating the dough before frying it is they do puff up a little bit more. I don't mind it, but if you want something that's a little bit tighter and closer together, I would pipe it directly into the oil, but I prefer it to be a little bit fluffier anyway. I'm gonna give these a turn because I didn't turn down my oil because she was paying attention to you and not the cooking. And then I will show you our finished product. This right here is my churro. I will be posting the recipe after the show, but before I do that, I want to show you guys how I made my starter yeast for bread. I love hot chocolate. Okay. So this bowl right here has my starter for my bread that I'll be doing next week. My first 2 recipes will be done with yeast packets, but in order to make yeast at home, it's very simple. All you need is a glass bowl, and you're gonna mix equal parts flour and water, and that's it. And then for 4 days after that, you're gonna mix equal parts flour and water, and then add it to this. You're gonna keep a dry dish rag on top, and you're gonna wanna keep it in a place that has a pretty consistent temperature between 68 and 75 degrees. Most recipes that I've seen for this suggest that you keep it on top of the refrigerator, because the heat from the back of the refrigerator comes up and it'll keep your bowl a little bit warmer. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for staying with me throughout this churro process. I'm gonna take these guys out before they burn. You guys enjoy your Friday night. Make sure you watch Drag Race and watch my favorite Britta. And I will see you on Saturday to begin Bread Week. Have a great night, everybody.